would be me. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Always a pleasure to rise on behalf of the great constituents of Brantford, Brant South Six Nations. Budgets are not just balance sheets. They have consequences, and the consequences of this budget are already visible. Higher food prices, fewer full-time jobs, rising debt, and record food bank use. This is not theory. It is the lived, sad reality of families who can no longer afford groceries, seniors forced to return to work to cover basic costs, and workers who cannot find full-time hours. This budget did not fix that reality. It locked it in. When the Prime Minister told Canadians how to judge his government, he said, "Judge me by your experience at the grocery store." Well, Canadians have done exactly that, and what they see is sticker shock where supper used to be. Today, Canada has one of the weakest growth performances in the G7, food inflation at double the Bank of Canada's target, food prices rising nearly 40% faster than in the US, and home building predicted to fall by as much as 13%. This is not recovery. This is the cost of the Prime Minister, the costliest this country has ever seen. Who would have imagined that we would have a hunger crisis in a G7 country? Last week, Feed Ontario released a hunger report that should shock the conscience of every member in this House. 8.7 million food bank visits in Ontario alone, 24,000 visits every single day. 1 in 16 Ontarians now rely on food bank usage. But here is the statistic that breaks the Liberal illusion that everything is fine. Nearly 1 in 4 food bank users actually has a job. Food Banks Canada put it bluntly, employment is no longer a reliable buffer against poverty. That means people are working but still going hungry. In my community of Brantford, in the past 3 years, the number of people relying on the food bank in a single year has doubled, from 5,000 to more than 10,000 people. The situation was so bad, City Council had to declare a food insecurity emergency. As the Brantford Food Bank Director put it, in 20 years on this job, I wasn't sure we'd ever get here, where food security is being taken as an emergency in our community. When a Canadian city is forced to declare a food emergency, that is not a trend, that is a warning and a direct indictment on the failures of leadership in this country. More than half of food bank users now cite food prices as a reason that they are there. More than a quarter cite housing. This is Canada in 2025. Parents skipping meals for their children, seniors choosing between prescriptions and groceries, workers lining up at food banks after full-time shifts. And Canada's food price report for 2026 confirms the worst. Families will pay nearly $1,000 more per year for food. 86% of Canadians are eating less meat, and beef, chicken, and pork all increasing at once, a devastating trifecta. Canadians are being forced to abandon healthy food because they simply cannot afford it. Why is this happening? Now, the Prime Minister keeps saying inflation is global, but government costs are very local. Fuel, fertilizer, transport, packaging, every cost that hits a Canadian farmer now hits a family at the checkout. And when Conservatives demanded this government to scrap the hidden taxes on food, the industrial carbon tax, the food packaging tax, and the fuel standard tax, still adding 17% per litre, the Liberals voted no. The results speak for themselves. Under this Prime Minister, Canada has now one of the weakest growth performances in the G7. Productivity is collapsing, and business investment is falling quarter after quarter. Nearly 1 in 5 part-time workers want full-time hours but cannot find them because the jobs simply are not there. Last month alone, Canada lost 9,400 full-time jobs. At the same time, nearly 30,000 Canadians over the age of 55 were forced into part-time work over the past year, with 10,000 just in the last month, as rising grocery bills push seniors back into the workforce. This is what an affordability crisis looks like on a pay stub. Canadians don't need accounting tricks, they need paychecks that they can live on.
Hear, hear.
Let's talk about the daycare failure. For young families trying to raise children in Canada, the problem gets even worse. The government loves to point out the $10-day daycare as a flagship success. But for families who can't find a space who are still paying double that, the branding means nothing. Half of parents now report difficulty finding childcare. Nearly 1/3 of families are on wait lists. Over 3/4 of centres have wait lists, and 86% cannot find staff. Even the Auditor General confirmed that $10 a day promise is not the reality many families experience. Once again, this government announces a photo op and fails to deliver. The Prime Minister also promised to negotiate a win with the United States. Elbows up. Since that promise, tariffs have doubled, negotiations have stalled, and foundational industries face collapse. At Algoma Steel, 1,000 workers lost their jobs after $400 million in Liberal subsidies with no job guarantees. At Crofton, 375 workers lost their livelihoods. Last week, Canadians were also giving a stunning glimpse of how casually this government handles billions of taxpayer dollars when it was revealed that the Minister of Industry never even read the contract that handed $15 billion in subsidies to Stellantis, a deal she later defended after the company announced 3,000 job cuts. Think about that. $15 billion committed, thousands of workers laid off, and the minister responsible never reviewed the agreement. Complete and utter incompetence. That single moment says everything about this government's approach. No diligence before the check is written, no accountability after workers lose their jobs, and no consequences for those who sign away billions without even reading the fine print. When the government claimed it was separating operating and capital spending, Canadians were warned the books were being cooked. The Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed exactly that. Capital investment was inflated by $94 billion. True capital spending is 30% lower than claimed. Corporate subsidies were falsely counted as investment. The operating budget will not balance itself for at least 5 years. The debt to GDP ratio is rising again. The new fiscal anchor has only a 7.5% chance of being met. Even with claimed savings, total new spending still rises $90 billion. That translates to $5,400 per family. Even the Fitch ratings warn that this budget erodes Canada's fiscal credibility. The Prime Minister also promised 500,000 new homes per year. The PBO exposed the real truth. Only 5,200 homes per year will be added. Build Canada Homes will construct just over 1,600 units annually. Rents will rise to over $2,000 per month for a 2-bedroom unit. Instead of restoring the dream of home ownership, the Liberals are forcing Canadians into permanent renting status. Before this budget, Conservatives offered a clear, responsible plan and solution. Bring down the deficit to the level the Liberals promised, scrap the hidden taxes on food, end the inflation tax by cutting government waste, restore housing supply by cutting red tape and development charges. Every single one was rejected. Madam Speaker, this is how the most expensive Prime Minister this country has ever had, and Canadians are paying the bill at the grocery store, at the rent counter, and on their credit cards. Every dollar they spend comes from Canadian pockets. The more they spend, the higher food costs rise, the higher rent rises, the higher interest payment rises. Canadians now spend more on debt interest than on health care transfers. Conservatives will not and cannot support this costly budget. We will continue to fight for an affordable budget, paychecks that beat inflation, home peoples can buy, food families can afford, and an economy that rewards hard work again. Canadians have simply sacrificed enough after 10 years of failed leadership. It is time to end the Liberals' out-of-control spending and bring home an affordable budget for all Canadians. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary is the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. As you know, just a number of months ago, Canada elected a new Prime Minister, a new government, and I tell you, when I reflect in terms of what it is that the member has actually said, he makes and raises concerns about jobs. You know, in the last 3 months, we've seen in excess of 50,000 jobs created in each of the last 3 months. That is the reality of it. And when you talk about productivity, and the Conservatives have been talking a lot about productivity, one of the greatest gains in productivity is in our manufacturing industry. And of course, they don't reference those sorts of things. But my real beef with the Conservative Party of Canada today is how self-serving they are in regards to their own political best interest. We just had another member that stood up and spoke about the bail reform legislation and somehow tried to imply that it was the Liberals that were preventing it. Whether it's the budget bill or it's the bail reform bill, Canadians understand and need to know that it is the Conservative Party of Canada that's preventing its passage. Will you not please say the truth on that matter?
The honourable member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
The level of hypocrisy coming from that member, Madam Speaker, is absolutely through the roof. I am a proud member of the Justice Committee. I'm the vice chair of the Justice Committee, and he should be absolutely ashamed, and every member of the Liberal government ashamed at what is happening at the Justice Committee. Stalling, filibustering, canceling meetings without notice at the very last minute, not scheduling any meetings this week, the very last week of our sitting. Wow. They don't have the audacity to put together a meeting. So he needs to look himself in the mirror and say, we have failed Canadians. We are not delivering on the promise of bail reform because we are dragging our heels. Hear, hear.